So in this video we're going to be changing the coolant. Okay, we're going to be draining the coolant, flushing it through, and then topping it back up with fresh coolant. So very quickly, what's the difference between coolant and antifreeze? Well, the coolant is just that. Basically, it's a liquid that goes around your engine and keeps the engine from overheating, keeping it cool. Okay, so for example, water. You can put water in the system, it'll travel around the engine. The heat will transfer from the engine into the water goes into the radiator, is cooled through air or the electric fan, drawing air. The water cools down, goes back into the engine, again takes the heat away from the engine, into the radiator, and so on and so on and so on. Antifreeze basically is just added to that liquid or to that coolant to stop it freezing in winter. Okay, so what you can do is you can buy a pre-mixed, ready-made coolant slash antifreeze that you can just put straight into the engine. Now, instead of it just being water, it may have some additives to reduce corrosion or rust, and also to help lubrication on some of the parts, for example the water pump. So that's the main difference between coolant and antifreeze. Okay, so you can buy it pre-mixed. Just make sure that it's suitable for the engine that you have and your bike. Okay, so read the handbook or go to the manufacturer's website, whatever, and find out exactly what type of coolant antifreeze can go into your system. Okay, so the first thing you'll need to do is you need to take off the right hand fairing. This will give you access to the radiator and the radiator filler and the expansion bottle, which is just behind the fairing here. Okay, you'll also need to take off the left hand fairing, which will give us access to the hose, which is just behind here, the hose that connects onto the bottom of the water pump, which is where we're going to be draining the system. So remove both of the fairings and then we're ready to drain the system. Okay, so all the fairings are off. So, well, both sides are off. So we can see the expansion bottle here. There's the expansion bottle, and here's the radiator cap. Obviously, there's your electric fan in there. So to drain it, we obviously don't do this when it's hot or under pressure. Okay, it is a pressurized system, so if it is hot or it still feels warm, it might still be pressurized. Okay, so if you remove the cap, you have to be very careful. It's cold now, so I know that there's no pressure in there. So we remove the radiator cap and we remove the filler plug for the expansion bottle. Okay, and then once we've done that, we go around to the other side where the water pump is. Just get this set up so you can see it. So there's the water pump. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to release this circlip here and then remove this pipe. Okay. And that's it. That's it. And on the other side, what we want to do is, now we've drained the engine body of coolant, on the bottom of the expansion bottle, all I want to do is remove the clip and make sure we drain the expansion bottle. So a pair of pliers just to remove this little clip, just move it down out of the way. That's it. And then all I need to do is just take off this hose carefully. What we don't want to do obviously is break off the actual little lug that it's fitted onto. Now the coolant that's come out of it in mine is quite clean. Okay, if it looks very rusty when you're draining on the other side, if it looks rusty, it could be that the internals of the radiator need cleaning properly, and you might need to have the radiator, remove the radiator and have it cleaned professionally. Okay, if everything comes out nice and clear, you may not even need to bother flushing. But if you want to just give it a quick flush, all you would do now is put the hose pipe into the top of the radiator and just run a steady flow of water through the radiator out of the pipe that you disconnected from the bottom of the water pump. Let that flow into a bucket and just keep doing that until you're happy that it's clear. Once you're happy with that, put this bottom pipe back on, put the clip back on, put the hose back onto the water pump, tighten the hose up to the normal to the correct tension, okay, and then very slowly fill the radiator. Okay, just pour it in very slowly. This will allow any air that's in there to actually come up to the top. Once you fill up to the neck, give the bike a shake from side to side, and again, if there's any air in corners, that should dislodge it hopefully, and it will come up to the radiator cap. So once you've finished up to the top of the radiator, you've topped it up as much as you can and there's no more air coming out, put the radiator cap back on and then fill up the expansion bottle to the correct full level. So now we just run the bike up until it's just warm for about 5, maybe 10 minutes at the most. So all I'll do now is switch off, let it cool down and drain it exactly the same we drained it the first time. So now we've drained the system as we did before, we just put all the hoses back on, connect everything up correctly, and we start to fill the system now with the pre-mixed antifreeze / coolant, to the correct levels. So when you're refilling, it's very important now that you fill the radiator slowly, because there's a chance that you can cause air locks and trap air in the system. Okay, so the first part of getting all the air out is making sure that we fill the radiator up slowly. So what I want to try and show here is why we're doing this slowly. So see it now, see the air coming out, see the level just dropping slightly. Okay, so now we're getting to that point. Just going to rock the bike. And we keep topping it up until we've got it as full as we possibly can. You can see there, that's right at the top. And it doesn't look as though it's going to go down any further than that. That's the radiator and everything, all these bottom hoses, and hopefully the bottom hose down by the water pump, they'll actually be full. Okay, but there's still possibility of air trapped in the top. And of course, what we do now is we put the radiator cap back on. Okay, make sure it's on all the way. And now we fill up the reservoir bottle, or the expansion bottle, up to its full level. That's about fine. Okay, so I'll put this back in. Okay, so that's the system filled up as much as we can. We'll run it up for a couple of minutes and then we need to bleed the thermostat. Okay, so hopefully you can see the screw in the center of the video. Okay, this is the bleed screw that's on top of the thermostat housing. So you can see it directly in there. Okay, so we drained the system, flushed out the radiator, filled it back up, flushed it through and drained it. Okay, now it's all topped up, it's all filled up with the proper coolant and antifreeze. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to run it, and I'm only going to run it for a few minutes, and then I'm going to bleed that screw bleed the system there, the thermostat, to make sure that all the air is released. Okay, we don't want to run it too long in case there is an air block somewhere and there isn't coolant getting to the engine properly and it overheats. So I'm going to start it up, let it idle for a few minutes, switch the engine off, and then bleed it just to see if you can hear the noise of it bleeding. If the sound's different, by the way, it's because since the last part and this part of the video, my wireless microphone arrived, so hopefully the sound is better. Okay, so we're just going to run it for, like I say, 2 or 3 minutes. I'm just around the other side of the bike at the moment. I'm just squeezing the bottom holes on the radiator just to try and help circulate it and get rid of any trapped air. And I'll do the same thing with the hose from this side of the radiator going down to the water pump. While I'm doing it, I'm just checking the temperature on the dashboard. So it's 41 degrees at the moment. Now also, while we're just going through this preliminary stage, we just want to rev it up to force the water from the water pump at a higher rate of knots and try and squeeze it around the system. Right. So we've just got up to 50 now. Okay, so we'll run it for a couple of minutes. I'm going to just switch it off now. I'm just going to see if I try and bleed it, if we hear anything coming out of there. Oh, yes, there is coolant. So there's no air, you can see it there. So that's just coolant coming out. So I'm just going to pinch that up, start it back up again. And this time I'm going to bleed it while it's actually running. Okay. Yeah, so I can see where that's just liquid, there's no air in that at all. So I'll pinch that back up, and a bit later on, once it's not running, I'll get a spanner and just pinch that tighter. So now, we get the camera out. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to let it idle up to working temperature. We'll want to wait to see if the fan cuts in. Okay, so it's been running for a few minutes now. I'm just letting it idle. I can see the temperature's now up to 83. And what I'm waiting for is to see the actual fan cut in. Normally it comes in at about 100 degrees, something like that, somewhere there or thereabouts. Okay. It's a bit smoky because I've changed the oil and the filter as well, which I've done in a separate video. So it's just burning the residue off the exhaust. Okay, so the temperature's up to 72. Okay, so the temperature is now 86, 90, 95. Okay, so it's 99, so I expect the fan to cut in the next couple of minutes. And there it goes. So that's the fan operating now. So you can hear the fan. So what I'll do now is I'm going to let the system cool down, and as it cools down, what will happen is if there's any requirement, it'll actually start to take coolant from here. So what we need to do now is let it go cold, then check the expansion bottle, fill it back up to the correct level, and then checking for leaks at the hoses, make sure that that's okay, and that is your system bled or drained, flushed and refilled. Okay, that's all for now. If you liked the video, then leave a like. If you didn't like the video, then leave a dislike. Either way, leave a comment, suggestion or any questions you may have in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss any of my future content. Once again, thanks for watching.